Hey, how's it going everyone? Brian here with another Java game programming tutorial. So last time we left off, we added the save function to our editor so that we could draw pretty maps and hit S and it will save to a file down over here. You see I have a few test maps here. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to make a load feature so we can actually read those maps that we've saved into the game and either like into the editor where we can like continue working on them, or into the actual game where we can actually play on these maps. I don't believe we'll implement a dialogue for it, as in like in the game, like choose a map yet. That'll probably be, you know, a little bit down the line. But for now, we'll just be able to swap out like a string name inside of our program to load separate maps. But before we get into that, I need to announce that on Patreon we just passed another milestone. It's our second one so far now, which will now remove all of the mid-roll advertisements from these new videos, these new Java game programming episodes, which is pretty awesome. So I just want to take this time to say thank you so much to everyone that's supported me so far on Patreon. Definitely means a lot and is definitely making a huge impact on the series. And we just got another milestone done, which is pretty sweet. Of course, you can check it out by clicking the link on the screen. So let's get into it. I think we are going to do our load map function inside of the leveler helper we made. So we have our save map function here. We're going to do a load map function right below it. But first, you see right now we have a way to transfer, I don't want to say transfer, we have a way to like translate a tile into a string, right? That's what this getTileID function does, is you input a tile and you get out a string that represents that tile, such as 0 or 1, technically numbers, but in string form, or 2 or 3. So what we're going to do this time is kind of like the opposite. We want to do something where we can input a string and get back a tile type. So we're going to do that right above here. We're going to say public static TileType get TileType. And we're going to pass in a string for the ID. Literally like the exact opposite of what this one right below it does. So we're going to set it up the same way, where we have a variable up here and we turn that variable down there, and in between we have a switch statement. So we're going to have a type, which I'll just call type, and we're going to return that type. And we are going to, just like we did here, remember we set it to E by default, so we know if something went wrong. We're going to do that here too. We're going to say type is equal to TileType.null. Remember, null is never actually going to be in our game. It's never going to appear on the map. It's kind of just like our buffer to see if something went wrong. So then in between that, we're going to put our switch statement, and we're going to check for the ID that we passed. And we are going to say case 0 will be type equals TileType.grass break case. Make sure you have it in the same order as the last the method right below us. If you have different tile types than me, or your setup's a little bit different, just make sure you have the exact same order. It'll make it easier in the future when we kind of like combine this kind of stuff. So case 1, oops, type equals TileType.dirt break. Case 2 is, I believe, water, TileType.water. And finally, case 3 is null. And right now we already start as null above, so this isn't going to do anything right now, because for some reason if it was a case 3 it would just keep it the same. But we might change this line, so just make sure you include this last case right here. So now we have a way to input a string into this method and get back a certain tile type. So the reason it's kind of the opposite of getting the tile type from the, or I'm sorry, getting the string from the tile type is because last time we were saving the map and now we're loading the map. So we're trying to read what we saved. So let's go ahead and make a public static tile grid. We're going to return the completely finished grid here, not just some kind of like array of data. So public static tile grid load map, and the only thing it needs is the map name. Alright, once we pass the map name, we're going to make a tile grid that we're going to return here. So I'm just going to name it grid equals a new tile grid. And it'll start as a default tile grid where everything is grass. So our constructor in the tile grid class, remember, if we don't pass in an argument right now, we're just setting everything equal to grass. So we're going to make one of those here, named grid. And at the bottom, we're going to return grid. And in between here is where we're going to do the magic. So we're going to do a nested for loop, as I'm sure you are used to by now. I equals 0, I is less than grid dot get tiles wide, I plus plus, and j equals 0, j is less than grid dot get tiles high, j plus plus. And above this, what we should do actually is we actually need to read the data from the file and store it into a string that we can then iterate through. So let's do that. Let's do that right down here. We'll need to put it in a try catch. So we'll just do that right now. We'll just say try. And inside of here, that's going to want us to catch exception E and E.print stack to trace. All right. So inside of here, just like we did above where we had a buffered writer and a file writer, we're going to do the opposite because we're loading this time. So it's literally called buffered reader, br equals new buffered reader. And guess what it takes in here? A new file reader. And instead of passing in a file, we can actually just pass in the string of the file path or the file name because it's in our root directory right here. So just type in map name. And we'll need to import the buffered reader and the file reader. Okay, now, what is this? We didn't close it? Oh, it's not used. Now, right below that, we can say string data. You know what? We actually need to, These try catches make it kind of like difficult to format everything. I guess I can just put this entire, let's put this entire nested for loop, copy that, and delete it, and put it inside of this try area right here. So now, string data equals br, which is our buffered reader, dot read line. So we've pretty much opened our file, whatever that file name is map name. We've opened that file in our program, and we've taken all the data that's inside of it and put it into a string called data. So if you remember from last time, all those like zeros, ones, and twos are now stored in this string. So now all we need to do is just go through our grid, which when we start is all grass, and tile by tile we need to set it to the appropriate tile type. So we'll say grid dot set tile. The X is I, the Y is J, and the type, we're going to use our brand new method of get tile type. And for the ID, it's going to be data, which is all of that long string, dot substring. And I'm going to explain this in a second because this line's going to look kind of confusing. Trying to think. It is I multiplied by grid.getTilesHigh plus j. And then the ending index is the same thing, I times grid.getTilesHigh plus j plus 1. Alright, so I know it looks pretty confusing. The way substrings work, I actually have this handy picture that I made. You guys are probably hoping I don't do Photoshop tutorials after seeing this. But I made this cool design where there's like blocks on the edge. No, it's just low resolution. Anyway, so say our string, our data, is this ABCD, right? In reality, it's zeros, ones, and twos. But let's just say it's the string right here, ABCD, is our tile grid data that we saved. Every single character in this string has an index, right? These indexes are located between the characters. So when we take a substring, what we're saying is if we want to get the letter B out of this string, we would have a starting index of 1 and an ending index of 2. And everything in between that is what we'd get returned, which is just B. If we wanted to get BCD, we'd have a substring of 1 at the starting index, and 4 at the ending index. That gives us B, C, D. So the way we have it set up in Eclipse right now is we have this kind of complicated formula to get where we want to start, and then we have the exact same thing, right? I times tile grid, or grid.getTilesHigh plus j plus 1. That's the only difference between the starting index and the ending index. And I'm sure you guys can figure this out, but the reason that is because we just want to take one character at a time, right? One tile at a time, because no matter what that formula is, right here, it could be anything, we know that this is just going to be one higher, because it's the exact same formula plus 1 at the end. So when we're iterating through, say I ends up being 2, then I plus 1 will be 3, and we'll get the letter in between, which is C. I might go into more detail on this in the future, but for now we're going to keep it kind of brief. So we're now iterating through the file letter by letter, which is really number by number because we're storing it as zeros and ones and twos. And we're using our new method here to find out what each of these numbers corresponds to, what kind of tile type, and then we're setting that tile in the grid equal to the appropriate tile type. So let's now go to our editor. And first off, I'm going to save a new map. I'm going to name it New Map 1. I'm going to run the game, go to my editor, and I'm just going to draw something that I would recognize when I load it. So this will work. It's a 1 if you can't tell. And then we hit S to save it and exit. And just to make sure it's saved, I know it did, but I'll go ahead and right-click our file here, or our folder, and click refresh. And you can see New Map 1 down here. So it's saved. So now let's load the map. We will obviously ingrain loading a lot more into the game, but just to see if our loading function works, we're going to kind of do it the quick and dirty way here. When we start the editor, instead of starting on a brand new tile grid with just grass, let's actually start with our load map function, and let's load new map 1, which is the map that I just created. And remember, we have access to this load map function because we're already importing all of the methods from our leveler helper. So now when we start the editor, we should start with that map that I just created instead of a brand new map. So go ahead and start it, click editor, and it's there. So now we can actually save and load maps. And it's really cool because if you want to work on a map longer, you know, add some dirt, add some water, make it look, I mean, yours will probably never look as beautiful as this is that I'm creating right now. But if you want to save a map and work on it later, you just hit S to save it. And you can go away, you can exit Eclipse, whatever, and then 10 months down the line when you want to follow these tutorials again, you can run the game, go to editor, and it's just as you left it, just as beautiful as you remember it. So this has been saving and loading maps, which is a huge thing to get off of the table, kind of get done with, because those are kind of complicated areas. Obviously, we're going to go back and optimize them and kind of make them a little bit more fluid and put them in the game. But this was a major accomplishment for our game, so good job, everyone. And thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.